Happy Sunday, everyone.
Hey guys.
So today, it's me and Andrew. This is episode 21. Oh shit. Just check it a second. 20 or 21? Yeah, just make sure. Yeah, 21.
Okay.
Episode 21. So today, as you can see, we're wearing our Cafe Cabales caps. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to come back to some training aspects, specifically the neck, why the neck is important. Andrew and I have been working together on his energies for a while.
Yes.
A little bit of background from Andrew, obviously, for those that don't know, but he's had a few surgeries on his right knee, blew his knee working, I could say that right there.
I think so, yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Blew his knee working in the elevators field, so he had to end up getting 2 surgeries, trying to work at it, worked on his basically all of his energies. He's been working with physios, with certain exercises to help him with the knee. It's getting better, sometimes doesn't, but what we do notice is that, or what Andrew actually noticed this week, is that the minute his neck lined up in place, he felt a lot of movement from the lower limbs, if I'm not mistaken.
I'd say almost everything below the head, yeah.
Okay, there you go. Okay. Reason being is because your head pretty much controls everything. And once that's out of line, well, your spine is out of line, your shift and whole body is out of line, and a bunch of other muscles, tissues, tendons, and everything compensates to keep your line in your neck in line. We see this a lot in our everyday lives now. Neck muscles and upper back muscles are very weak, simply because A, poor breathing patterns, B, the texting and the computers are all hunched over. You got a lot of tight muscles in the front. Your shoulders are always rolled in. Your back muscles aren't as strong as they should be. So, if I'm not mistaken, it's every inch or every 5 centimeters that your neck is pulled forward, you actually put 12 pounds more load on the spine, and it ages your spine like 5 years at a time. So that's something to think about when you're in your everyday life, pretty much. And I'm not gonna talk about this throughout today's podcast, but just to bring it back to what's going on in society, if you notice, a lot of people are sad and depressed, and you notice their shoulders are completely rolled in, and they're protecting themselves because they're sad and depressed. So if we look back into energies and emotions, a lot of people, when they seem strong, confident, and whatnot, but their shoulders always rolled in, you know that there's a lot of emotional buildup inside, that they're keeping everything bottled up. They're not letting things out. Coming from our background, and you see it, their spine should be straight like a board, and the upper back is tilted. A, it could be just muscle. B, it could be emotions. C, it could be everything. So just going to try and put everything together today and make you understand why it's important to train the neck. And who other better than Andrew to speak about biomechanics, because he's a lot better than I am at that.
I don't think that's true. I really know. I've watched you train people for a long time. I think you're a lot better than you give yourself credit for. I just articulate really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can discuss it. And I can relate because a lot of the injuries I probably had, so I can feel them. So the reason why this came up today is just, obviously, Anthony was trying to make a relation to like the world, which is why he does these things. He wants like a useful tidbit hour for everybody to take something from. But I brought it up originally because I was just with my physio. Actually, I have 2 physios, and one is more axed on global movement, neurological, breathing, and the other one is very orthopedic, classical. But they're both very, very good at what they do. And what I was asking my more orthopedic style physio this week was, I know you work on my knee and this is what you're supposed to do, but like my neck and my low back are really acting up. And I told him, I was like, if I were training the person, this is what I would do. And then he told me, yes, I would probably do the same thing. But the fun thing with the physios is they've always got like these other tweaks, these exercises. They got this massive lexicon of movements, and they gave me actually, no, I won't talk about what they gave me, but like just when you look that kind of stuff up, normally people are gonna just speak of like the chin tucks, okay? But the downside to that is you have Like you go Google this now, you go YouTube this now, you're gonna find it. It's not. It's dime a dozen, but it's you gotta think. Okay, I'm flexing. I'm hunched forward, and I have this sort of inhibition of these deep neck flexors in the front that do this motion. Okay, but I don't want to stay there because when I stay in this position, I'll probably get a flat cervical spine, and the spine should have these curves that match each other, like a nice spring made to absorb shock. So this excessive chin tucking all the time we do first, we start to mess with the natural curvature of the spine, if that's all that we do. And we're not necessarily strengthening the back, the extensors as much, so they have to be working together as a pair. Beyond that, we're also in the front, we're going to be compressing the hyoid bone. The hyoid bone, we're going to affect swallowing and breathing. So energetically, I assume in time you're going to affect digestion, you're going to affect everything else.
You affect also the thyroid. You block the thyroid, right? The metabolism and thyroid is all together, so you're blocking it in. You're reducing the function of the thyroid to do its job properly.
So if it to kind of go into what I was given this week, which gave me so much benefit, is I was given 2 exercises. One is just looking straight and actually a chin tuck, drawing back into a deeper traction to a point where I feel these deep neck flexors activate. It's pretty far from me. I'm going to explain why after. And then you would extend over that. Okay? So you pair the movement. That was okay, but since I've had Bell's palsy and the neurological the neurological inhibition and then imbalance of muscles on my face and my neck, they created a tendency to tilt to one side because one side's a lot stronger. So the other one they gave me was actually 45 degrees out to the side on both sides. And I'm going to draw. And this one, for some reason, I feel a lot easier. I can feel the muscles activate really on one side. I draw back to one side.
And then I'm extending and rotating.
Interesting.
And it's like as you go, much like when, let's say, you've seen Anthony before, you do a split squat, you feel that unilateral sort of use of the area, which is very foreign for the neck, right? Like unless you're in a fighting sport or you have an inclination towards like proper biomechanical training, you're not doing this kind of work. But for me, that unilateral made a big difference because it made me very aware of the difference left to right and how far back I could go. Because when you go straight back, imagine we're looking at this position a lot of us are getting into from this or from the emotional burden, right? Like I think it's doing my the emotional burden is like that bison hump, that area, and you get this just choking of your body and your emotional reality.
And then that hump in the back makes you look like Quasimodo, just for those that don't understand.
You've seen it, yeah. It's essentially, imagine you look at your spine being a chain and it moves as one, but it does have bumps to it, it's segments. And if you're too far forward for too long, eventually, instead of just like tilting forward, the eyes will not see that as functional. It's trying to keep like level view of what's in front of you. It's going to kick up the head, create like a compression up here by the skull, and then the lower cervical, lower part of your neck kind of shears forward. So instead of being aligned adequately, it'll kind of like kick forward, and you'll see that development of that hump around those tissues because it's attempting to keep the head on. It'll lay on. I don't know if it's fat or if it's calcium deposit, but it'll lay on tissue there, and it's like trying to hold the head there like an anchor. So that's where the tuck ideally brings those things back, and then you extend over it because that's obviously a function you want to retain. But what sucks is when you're too far forward, like a lot of people are sheared, like myself, from being kind of in this rehab mode, being inactive for almost 2 years, there's like a massive adaptation and weakening of the muscles around my spine, and you don't notice that you're not properly positioned because you're not challenging with load anymore, like when you're training or playing a sport. Like when you're crooked, you know when you're playing a sport, you're like, whoa, I'm picking up this load or throwing this ball and I don't feel right. So there's like an adjustment that almost gets made automatically by your brain. But when you're a potato like I've been, things just kind of melt into weird positions. And when you do the chin tuck straight back, which is traditionally what you'll find, is if you're sheared too far forward, you kind of jam here. And that's why I really like this 45 degree, because it's like you kind of avoid that jamming, and then you're extending over, and you'll notice how bad extension and rotation is in that upper part of your neck. That first session with that physio when he was doing this, I mean, I had pain and grinding at it's either my first or second vertebrae. So like the atlas where it meets the occiput, so occiput would be like this cup bone of your skull in the back, and then the atlas would be the first vertebrae. And it just felt like it was actually affecting my eyes. Like it was probably beneficial, but initially my body was fighting it and protecting it, and I couldn't even look up.
So if we could touch on a bit of the eyes.
Yes.
If even we spoke a bit about it last week about the energies and stuff, but if let's say the atlas is off and putting tension on the eyes, like for Andrew in his case, we know that it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a toll on the nervous system as well.
Oh
and
my God! Yeah.
Your nervous system, your eyes, like we mentioned, is directly related with the nervous system, so it weakens or just reduces the energies of the whole body as a whole. Again, because your eyes control pretty much every muscle pathway in the body, right? So over 200 muscle pathways in the body. So that's why, again, when working with Andrew is not just the biomechanics, the exercises, but we work on recalibrating the feet and the eyes so that the senses of the feet can absorb any traction on the floor. So this body posture already kind of align itself much easier. And that makes it easier for him to do his movements. And if you see Andrew most of the time, he walks around barefoot. That's basically how we should be living in an idealistic world, is basically barefoot as much as possible, because as we say, the shoes basically block traction on the foot to have any traction on the floor. And you don't get the same motor skills or the sensory patterns on the foot when you have shoes on. So that's why even as babies growing up, you want to keep them barefoot as much as possible so that they could learn how to use their foot on the floor properly. There's reasons why there's steps to crawling, steps to getting closer and closer to standing up and walking, because you can't just stand up and make the child or the baby walk automatically. They gotta build to get the senses of the feet, build to get the muscles on the legs going, and then have a straight erect spine. So already if the foot is off even as young as a baby, then chances are that you're likely going to have injury growing up without even realizing it, because your body creates torsions that can put more load and stress on the body further on, especially during training.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like I am barefoot now, and I've done it at other times in my life when it's like via instinct, either with an injury or there's like a new training modality or a sport I was doing. But I gotta say, this time it only came about because I'd forgotten the benefit I used to gather from it, just like neck training. I first found out about neck training, must have been about 14 or 15, and it was one of those quotes from someone I looked up to, and I can't remember who it was. I don't know if it was a trainer who trained football players, was a football player himself, or it would have been maybe a powerlifter. But sorry guys, but it's the bastardized quote would be something like "bigger the neck, stronger the man." And I thought, okay, well I can learn how to train my neck. And I remember I would train my neck. Obviously, you look like a weirdo in a public gym doing that kind of stuff when you're that young, but it would there's certain things that just there's certain things that were easier for me than other people, like the traditional neck pains and hip pains I never had. But now as I reintegrated this past week, the second your skull and your neck are aligned a little more properly, the way it communicates between the rest of your spine and then thus your whole body is pronounced. Like in like energetic manual therapy, you have things like craniosacral therapy, and they relate a lot to the infant stage where you're being cradled by your mom. But when you're playing with your neck and you feel the atlas and the occiput kind of move, there are times where you become more aware, or at least I do, of your sacrum as well. It's like that last bit of your spine by your butt. And as I was doing this week, just training my neck, I'd stand up and I'd feel my hips differently. So like Anthony was talking about the feet, and what I'm noticing is, there's a lot of inhibition and issues with the feet, obviously, since I've been injured, but there's a lack of communication between the hip and my feet. And when I started playing with my head and my sacrum was moving, I became aware of my hips, and as I corrected my hips, my feet were naturally propped up. And for those who understand like biomechanics and the nomenclature, the names of different muscles, so by training my neck, get this, in 2 days by training my neck, my peroneus were both activating on on the side of my shin here, right? So I don't know if you guys can see it, like
Basically, it's tibia, right?
yeah, on the
The outer
outside of
side
my
of the
tibia.
tibia.
Yeah. So they're like the what would you call them? Like secondary muscles are taking on like eccentric load while you're walking, like stabilizing your ankle and your foot, and that's from training my neck lying down. So just as a concept, and I know it's not to shove it down your throat. So you hear Anthony speak as either a client or on these lives all the time, but it's pronounced when you do the energetic or the organ correction or this biomechanical correction, because the communication starts to occur. And if you've been out of the game for a while or life has been very difficult, that communication can get really skewed. And it's I know it's hard to have faith in these you want to bench and you want to squat kind of thing, and you come into here and someone's making you breathe and lay down. It's like there's a method to it. There's a reasoning behind it, and it's not that you're being led astray into this world that is not going to lead you to your fitness or your strength gain goals.
There's
It's
a pattern
being
to
built
it.
from the ground up.
Yeah, it's built exactly. There's a pattern to it, and there's like there's a foundation to a house, so you got to think of your body like the foundation as well. You got to go from the feet up, and the main first foundation really is breathing right. And if you can't breathe
Yeah.
right, then your whole structure is off because you're not going to get the right muscles working
Yeah.
optimally. So as we've been working, and I thought I was breathing correctly also until last year.
You and I
Last year in July 2020, we started working on breathing, and we're still trying to put a course together for that, but it's going to be a little more advanced. But the more I was working on my breathing, I started noticing, oh shoot, I'm not getting any air into this part of my left rib, and I'm not getting air into this part. And it's like the minute you start working at it, you start feeling as though those chains are opening up, and my deadlifts were just so much easier, and working on my hips as well, breathing into them, even the squats. I mean,
It's like you're using them now. Because
Yeah.
Anthony has pretty big legs for his size. Like he's bottom heavy. And the lifts didn't indicate it. Not to that extent. And then it's like once so if I can add, am I
Yeah,
interrupting
no,
your train of thought? So when the say you correct the head and the neck, and what I notice, again, a lot of people might be properly placed, that's why they don't notice the change, but I love working on breathing and have done so probably since I started lifting. I started lifting when I was like before my 12th birthday, and I'm 33 now. And what I didn't realize with the bells, and then obviously this period of inactivity in my head and my neck being out of place, how much neurologically or mechanically, as that head drifts away, that diaphragm doesn't pump properly. You think the deeper muscles of respiration, if you don't think secondary, like the muscles of your neck are secondary assisters to respiration, right? But if you're out of position, I'll describe a few different things. Imagine your head is forward, like I described, and it's sheared forward, and you're starting to breathe with this upper musculature. You're creating more tension here. You're creating more shear, and the head's getting out of place more. At the same time, where these attach on the ribs, you're starting to take these ribs that should be able to kind of pump up and pump down as you breathe, and they're getting stuck here. So then what happens? Your ribs up in the front are out here, not out here, but they're tipped up. It'll affect the way the spine is set. So if we're talking about the spine needing to have these three curves that match, a lordosis, an inward like extension curve in the neck, a kyphosis in the upper back, mid-back, and then lordosis extension in the low back, and then kind of like, again, another kyphosis at the sacrum. Those ribs, they will play with that position, so they're attached to the vertebrae. So if those top ribs attached to your neck, which is now out of place, kick up, that upper back gets flat. So two things, you got scapula, shoulder blades that aren't properly placed on a nice convex, concave kind of orientation, but also you're going to create more and more tension here. It's going to be harder and harder to get to a point where your head is back, and then your rib cage is sitting on top of your pelvis so your diaphragm can move properly. And what's cool is that it's not just the diaphragm, because you can imagine fascia-wise, connective tissue-wise, they're related and neurologically related to a lot of other things. You've got the second that head goes back properly, and a lot of people can attest to this, like Anthony's, well, he's got good posture, you can feel it too because his neck is getting strong. Your multifidus start to turn on. A lot. It's almost like when you look at your spine, you have superficially you have like the big erectors, right? And then you have traps, you have lats, of all these things. But below that, you have things like rotatorus, and you have multifidus. And multifidus kind of look like the little chevrons, the little arrowheads They're spindles that are kind of attaching between spinous processes all the way up the spine. Okay, so where your erectors pass over like a big tail almost, these are intersegmental. So when they're working well together, they move as one. They flow like a chain. But what you'll see sometimes when people have back, neck issues, whatever, whether it's weakness or improper position, you'll have segments. If you go to like a chiro, someone using a scanner, the segments will be off in activation. So that chain that should be moving with flow, it has like kinks in its function or stability. And what people notice sometimes when they do the neck training, and then they're able to take in one like nice proper breath once the head's in the right position, they feel occiput, skull, all the way to their tailbone just light up like there's two rods. That's multifidus just going, and all of a sudden you know that the spine is going to be protected by that sort of base contraction or what activation. But they're not the only ones. At that deeper level, you have your diaphragm, okay, you have your multifidus rotaris, and you're going to have the quadratus lumborum. Some people know that name because it's something that doesn't function or feel good on themselves as well. People point right to it and say,
well, love
yeah,
handles.
Yeah, and when people have issues, they're like, oh, my QL is weak, I need to work it. I was like, wait. If neurologically and position-wise you're not where you need to be, sometimes those muscles just don't activate well because the breath is wrong. So all these muscles work in sync with breath and contraction of that, and then you bring in the pelvic floor, right? So when you squeeze and try and withhold your orgasm or flow of urine or going to the bathroom, those muscles have function too. When you take a nice deep breath, if you've never done it properly before, and you let the air kind of go into your pelvis, you'll feel it.
I can attest to that.
It'll descend and ascend, right? Some people naturally grip it or have it too lax. A lot of people with lower back problems, it's too lax. There's either sometimes heavy lifting, you put a lot of pressure through those muscles without training them, and they become dysfunctional. Like even asymmetrical, one side drops more or raises more than the other. Then you create problems at the pelvis, low back, blah, blah, blah. Other people, like a lot of women you meet who are younger, I met in the past anyways, they grip their pelvic floor, whether it's because they think instinctually it'll keep their vagina tighter or whatever it is, but like it becomes a dysfunction as well. And then the breath doesn't go where it needs to go. It's almost like it's stopping and it's not getting deep enough. It's not relaxing. You're like relaxation here and then like tightness down below.
So what Andrew's trying to say is basically how you can or instinctively should be breathing is when you breathe is you bring all the air, and I've been doing this myself to practice it, is you bring all the air up into your pelvic area, and you should actually feel like as if you're bringing the air pushing, like let's say you're standing up or even sitting down, you should feel the air pushing into your chair and then bringing the air back up into your ribs and shoulders as soon as you exhale. So when you inhale, the air is filling up into the pelvic area, into the abs, into the chest, into the neck. You're filling up, and then as you let go, you exhale, but you exhale from the shoulders down, and then you squeeze so you tighten up the abs at the same time. You could literally be making abs as you're breathing. So some people who aren't breathing properly, once they turn on their breathing system, you're going to see a big change in your abs. And I've said that to myself too, that minute I started changing how I breathe, there's some muscles that started activating, and you see the cuts in the abs as well. So that's something that you can do that can help bring in breathing patterns much more efficiently. And also once we breathe properly, we're getting the ribs corrected, you're bringing in the air into the ribs, you'll have more muscle to tighten up the upper back or strengthen up the upper back, and then your head is going to be a lot easier to manipulate or control, and you're able to strengthen it.
Yeah, it's true.
So that's where everything of the whole neck to the bottom of the spine, so your top of the spine to the bottom of the spine, that's basically where everything can help assist in better posture. And if we want to add that, like we were saying, that if your head is tilted forward, you're blocking your digestive system and whatnot, your metabolism. But there's a reason why that as well, is that your vagus nerve starts from the top of your head and connects to your digestive system, and that's the enteric nervous system, what we call in neurology, in the nervous system. But basically that vagal nerve, if there's a blockage or there's a cutoff, it's not going to send the right signals to the brain to say if it's hungry or full. So overeating, undereating, whatever it is, you're not going to get the results you need in your workouts or just your everyday function as well. So that's another thing to take into consideration.
Yeah, it goes deep. It's like you're talking about the inhalation. Let's say, and there's different methods of breathing
Mhm.
as well. Like when Anthony's talking about kind of gripping anterior musculature, muscles in the front. Let's say that would be a technique when we're training and we're picking up load. Because if we try and let in the air too much and we inherently like let it come through the front, we'll actually create an open scissor, and instead of it being here like this excessive extension or improper position here, we get it in the low back. You'll see that a lot of times with people who are either overweight or really inflamed in the gut. And that's where Anthony comes in too. It's like, imagine we're talking about, we're trying to maintain position. Position is dynamic. You don't want to hold a position. Your body should be able to flow. Like breath should be the same way. Like if you're not eating adequately, or you're eating things that bother your system, or you're living a lot of grief or depression and your intestines affected, or whichever, or worry and your pancreas and stomach are affected, and you carry inflammation there, nociception can occur where you get reciprocal inhibition of muscles that are related to those organs, and a lot of times you have some in the midsection. So like it's really interesting where you're trying to correct one system, but they inadvertently are all interconnected. Where I had like this injury here, I blew my patellar tendon. And that and the quad are related to fire in the small intestine, right? So my cecal valve, this valve at is it at the end of the small intestine?
Between the small and the large intestine.
So it was dysfunctional, okay? And initially we always thought it was from digestion, but as the quad got better, that thing stopped coming up in screening. And when I went to see at a chiropractor at the time who was big in traditional Chinese medicine like Anthony, the cecal valve kept coming up, so he kept trying to adjust the vertebrae, and the vertebrae keep coming out. And you start getting issues with the gut because now the bacterial overflow from the large intestine that comes into the small intestine or vice versa, you mess up the systems because they're meant to stay separate for a reason. They have their own jobs. And when the quad started getting better as it healed.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just going to explain what the valve does. So basically the valve, what it does, it blocks any bad bacteria from going into the large intestine and that causes more harm pretty much.
Yeah, and that harm will be either inflammation in time or leaky gut, like SIBO, whatever it is. And that can be a longer problem to solve. That's why sometimes you work with people like Anthony, and you're thinking, why is it taking 6 months? It's like, well, out of my experience, from myself and my ex who did a lot of work on it, probably 3 years for your gut to feel like it's back from death kind of thing, or back from imbalance. It's a slow process. It's a lot of like you're basically killing off the issues, whether it be healing, lining of the area that's affected, or killing off pathogenic bacteria and then recultivating good. It's not done automatically. And to say for that cecal valve, so again, the chiropractor works with the spine. He's thinking, I'll adjust the spine and the nerve supply to that valve. It'll fix. But it kept coming off like a breaker in your house. So that's not the syndrome, that's the symptom. And as we started strengthening the quad and that wound was healing from surgery, that cecal valve went away. So we're like, okay, so this really is interrelation of systems. Like different professions, they're always discussing how, well, we work from gut out or we work from spine out, but they really do all feed into each other. Whereas like the mechanical aspect of a muscle, which is on the totem pole of health, below, it was affecting above. And like we're not trying to go into deep space now because we started with the head position. That's just it. It's like that's been the last few years of reverse engineering all these things myself, because this injury happened, and all these other things are happening as well. And which one led to which? Like I had impact on the knee. There's trauma, but is the system carrying other things that made it harder to come back, or was it what did it weaken it so that the impact was more traumatic? I don't know. But we're undoing that now.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting stuff. It's I hope if you guys are ever open to it, you give it the time of day and the time allotted. It's an investment, but it's so worth it because like the dietary adjustments with Anthony. Let's say like we did energetic work, but there's subtle dietary adjustments like my liver would come up a lot, and I had like nail psoriasis. We didn't know if it was fungus or psoriasis, but it seems to be more like psoriasis. So it's like, it's the nails, and that affectation in general is related to the liver. And I was like, well, I don't eat abnormally fatty or harmful fats. I don't feel anger like I used to. Although we found a little bit of repressed anger, which he released in his session, and that must have helped. But he added a lot more fruit to my diet. And fructose, for a large part, is stored in the liver. unlike other glycogen, just stored in muscle tissue and other cells, and it might have aided the function, honestly. I noticed my body heat, which was always high, which was a sign of a liver issue as well, is a little bit lower. I still kind of run hot, but it's a lot less. And the nails are all healing. So that's interesting. And the other thing, another big change he made is, I've always taken magnesium supplements, but he gave me magnesium a decent amount in the morning, and I have some at every meal. And I can tell you, dealing with the rigors of life, whether it's all the emotional, personal work that I've done, but there's probably a window of opportunity that magnesium consumption is given, because when that magnesium status in your body is lower affected, and you really go into all that magnesium does, it's deep.
Magnesium is needed for 300 biochemical processes in the body, and to make up one cell structure, there's 10 different small processes to make the cell functional, and magnesium is needed for 6 out of those 10. So that's how important magnesium actually is for the body. So if you're not getting enough magnesium, it's going to be beneficial.
It's interesting how a lot of times, not to go against what's been prescribed, but a lot of times you meet Western doctors who prescribe melatonin, and when you start looking at, well, the brief understanding I have of like those kind of pathways, it becomes like a negative feedback loop on that consumption. They use melatonin, and all of a sudden they find themselves adapting to the dose very quickly, and then they're required to do like a 2 on 1 off or a 5 on 2 off, and it's just not sustainable long
I
term.
think we're getting a little off the
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
we're
just
gonna
interesting
get back
stuff.
into
The
it, yeah.
magnesium was really.
But going back to the magnesium with the neck, actually,
Yeah.
magnesium is actually considered as a supplement to help with communication as well. So
Oh,
imagine
cool.
having your throat off, your thyroid's off, your throat chakra is off, you're not expressing yourself, your magnesium chances is off as well.
So you say expressing as in literally communicating?
Communicating.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Expressing itself, it could be expressing through anything you do, is playful joy, it's something you enjoy, whatever it is, but
Okay.
we're talking really about communication through speech and stuff, right? So you're
Ah.
blocking yourself. So if we're talking about the neck, and if your neck is pulled forward and you're not speaking your truth, then your magnesium is probably dropping as well, and it's just creating more stress on you. So that's something to consider as well. I think we'll stop it there, and we'll just try and give some maybe 1 or 2 exercises that can help with the neck.
Sure. Sure.
The one that Andrew was saying is actually pretty good, that you just push your head back and tilt your head back as well. So that's a good one. And what I normally like to use is a big Swiss ball in the back of your head.
Yeah, you add resistance.
Add a bit of resistance. You put it at basically a little higher than the base of your skull. So like Andrew said, the occipital part of your head. And what you do is just press into it, and if you want to just tilt your head up a little bit, you can do that, and you hold it for 4 to 6 seconds, and you do like 6 to 8 reps. You could do, so again, another thing to take into consideration is to do small repetitions or short repetitions for the neck, because it's not meant to do high load as well. It's meant to do small load and to keep strength in the neck so that it doesn't have to. It's basically what we call fast twitch, and what fast twitch muscles are is explosive. So something like the neck that needs to be turned quick, it's faster twitch muscles that need to be exercised as much as possible, so that when something actually does happen, your neck is going to be ready. So if we take any sports like a combat sport or any sport that basically you need to turn your head back and forth to analyze the situation, your neck has to be as quick as possible. So if it's
I did not know that.
yeah, so if it's if you're training your neck to be slow twitch, then it's gonna react a little slower, not maybe not exactly as slow as a slow twitch, but I'm just saying it has to be explosive as much as possible. So when you're taking a hit, whether it's hockey, you're doing headers in soccer, whether you're taking a punch to the face, your neck has to absorb all that. So it's all something that happens within an instant. So when we're working lower reps, you're helping it strengthen something that would happen in an instant. So that's why, not more than 6 to 8 reps when you're training your neck, and you just hold it under tension so you could strengthen it more. So that's why 4 to 6 reps would help. Another thing you could do is something that actually Andrew had shown me. You could take an elastic band, and again you could put it against the top of the base of your skull, and you hold the rope in front of you.
Now why?
and you do the same thing. Exactly. So now why?
This, yeah.
So why is not only are you working on your head muscle, so it's a little more advanced in my opinion than just having the ball and
100%.
yeah,
Don't
and
start
having the
there.
ball behind you.
Yeah.
So you're locking your arms forward.
And protracting.
Yeah, so you're bringing other muscles into the picture as well, like your shoulder girdle. We'll just keep it simple. Your shoulder girdle,
for
so
sure.
your back muscles,
Yeah.
and you're going forward so that you can work the small, weaker muscles that haven't been used for long periods of time as well. So you're working two things at once: neck muscles, back muscles.
Yeah, so imagine why that's important in time, because like Anthony mentioned something earlier that was important too. He mentioned working the upper back in assisting the neck, and that happens to working with different people. To get to the same end goal, sometimes you need different strategies, and sometimes training the neck directly, you get worse results than if you train the upper back and then the neck, or vice versa. For some reason, every time I train the neck and then the upper back, I get better results. I notice Anthony does the opposite. He gets upper back work done, I think, and he gets, so what you do is, as you pull all these muscles around the shoulder blades back, and you learn, the body learns how to control them and orient them, imagine how they're layered and they're connected to the neck. You're creating room for the neck to move, because if your head's forward, the shoulders tend to come over the top, so you're actually kind of jam into tissue trying to come back as well. So there's that shear I was talking about, but also the fact that the tissue of the upper back is creating a web against it. When Anthony trains his upper back and he brings everything kind of back, imagine this is the shoulder blade back and down, he's got room here. Now he does his neck exercise and it comes back into place a lot easier. And you'll see some guys who train a lot of people, who work a lot in rehab, they'll recommend initially when you train the neck to actually squeeze the shoulder blades back, so that you know where the shoulders are and you're able to create room. And in time, the goal, like Anthony said, when it gets more complicated, is to work on reaching. We don't necessarily want to reach right away, because when we reach right away in the position we're off, if our shoulders are up, we reach forward, we tend to reach with our trap. And we actually protract and we elevate the shoulder blade, and we'll create more of the same dysfunction. What Anthony was doing, if you can see from the side, he was actually pulling everything down, and his shoulder blade was wrapping around his rib cage. He was causing upward rotation of it. And the middle and lower traps, along with the serratus, these kind of diamond cuts right here, they're coming and they're taking the shoulder blade into like a more optimal natural path for its movement on the rib cage. And then we move the head back in that position. People who can do that properly, they'll notice how their arms and their extremities communicate with their neck. It's immediate. You're going to feel probably from the base of your skull to your mid-back, and it's going to light up like this. And usually when people do that, they feel the contraction in their back training more than they've ever felt before, because it instantly, the trapezius as a whole is going to work better. It's going to innervate, it's going to work better.
Out of all this, what I'm going to say is work the small muscles so that you could help the bigger muscles get better, and everything as a whole gets better. So I will leave it on that note.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry, we're not trying to go too
No,
long.
that's
We're
fine.
strapped
Yeah,
for time today, but
Yeah, I think that covers everything though. So it's important you guys just work on the small muscles. Don't always go for the big muscles just because they look good. Work on the small ones. You'd be surprised even just what a 2.5 pound can do to help with your back or your neck, whatever it is. But try and get a structured program. Those that think they're still doing something well, in the long term might not be efficient enough and might burn the nervous system. So take that into consideration. And we'll leave it on that. It's a nice sunny day until the clouds start to come in. Go enjoy, and we'll see you guys next week, hopefully for the next podcast.
Can I add one little thing?
Yeah.
You got quite a few people here who can do this kind of stuff as well. Anthony can do it. He's obviously very busy, and sometimes he doesn't have the time for you. But he's got other guys like Robert Amado, and he's got Jean-Simon Lacroix here as well to do that kind of work. I think the other trainers as well, the two Terrys, they're working towards that kind of understanding as well. You got Frankie, you got Arminio. I'm sure Tanya understands all. You see how she understands her yoga. There's a lot of people here who can do this kind of work with you, and not to try and like sort of shill the business, but at this time, if you're wondering why sometimes you're not feeling so hot, there's been a lot in the past 2 years, and even these little sessions, like what I was describing, how I felt with my neck, it could alleviate so much, because I think within one day I came here and people noticed my mood was very different. I'm usually feeling pretty good, but it was just, I felt energized. My brain was obviously functioning better by having this stuff in place, so I highly recommend you guys reach out to these people.
Thank you, Andrew, and guys, have a good Sunday again.